let's call the meeting to order. Start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll just do a quick roll call. Mike Whitten, I'm the vice chair.
Chris Regan. Rob Fritz.
Greg Fishbein.
Bob Gross.
Jesse Reynolds.
We have a quorum. Okay, so next on the agenda was updates, discussion, and action of this procedural administrative matters. I'm going to actually table this. Let's wait until the chair's back. We have applicants here, so let's just dive right into the applications. I'll first ask members of the board, do you have any applications that you have recusals on?
Yes. I'm recusing myself from Diversifit.
Okay, so this Bob Gross will recuse himself on Diversifit. So we'll start off.
Even though Bob Gross has signed the first bid.
I already called somebody up too.
That was just like I was.
I told them.
So I just want to just run over for the benefit of the applicants here. The committee is going to review the applications. We'll have a discussion and vote. Unfortunately, there's not an opportunity for you to discuss the matters with us. However, you heard it, you can listen. For the purposes of business applications, your average score in order for us to send a positive recommendation to the town council is 70. So you'll hear we'll go over the scores and we'll add them up and you'll hear what you got. But ultimately, we're making a recommendation to the town council. So just remember, this is not the end. So, all right, with that being said, we'll jump into the first application, Diversifit.
Then you only have 6. So do you want to pass it for now?
Well, yeah, okay. Why don't we wait and see if Amy comes?
Yeah.
It's actually just set.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Okay. So let's jump into custom travels, and Mr. Gross, now you are on the hot seat.
Oh, fun hot seat.
Why don't you run it by us?
All right, good evening. I took a look at this application. Whoever they are, they passed in a very thorough tax return. So we were able to see that they, in my opinion, qualify based on ARPA, the regulations or the criteria that the town council sent us. You can see that this business was impacted from COVID. I mean, it's a travel business, so it's pretty obvious, but they were definitely impacted from COVID. They are coming back a little, but they're not back to pre-pandemic levels. It's criteria, provided town. They were adversely affected in 20 and 21. They did receive PPP, but it didn't make up the difference from what they lost, or what to get them back to 19's levels. They had a loss in those years. For those reasons, I would give them a passing grade.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments or concerns about this? Okay, Craig?
I do recognize the loss. I mean, the loss, they reviewed the tax returns, just for the record, the gross income in 2019 was $47,000 to change. The gross loss in 2020, which is the heart of the pandemic, is minus $84,000. And then 2021, making more money than all of the timeline that we have, which is close to 60,000. So recognizing the shortfall, my problem is, what are they going to do with the money? So, I mean, there's no backup at all. As far as, I mean, it says, if we were to receive a $25,000 grant, we would advertise and hire a W-2 employee residing in Wallingford for advertising, social media, and administrative duties. Okay, that's nice, but I don't see, I mean, how does that address? They don't say in their application they were unable to advertise and therefore they need this person. So they're adding on another person, which I don't know. I mean, it's one of these applications where, it looks like somebody reached out and said, hey, you can get 25 grand, put it in an application and maybe you'll hit the lottery. If they had some sort of infrastructure improvement that they were unable to do as a result of, I just don't see the link up. So I did score them high on, the pandemic created a problem, but there's no way to tie their program to fixing that problem. And certainly there's no representation of debt being paid. But I mean, we have representation of communication area, phone, video, wall-built computer media that they would purchase, but there's no backup for that.
That was rescinded.
Oh, you can't speak, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Sorry.
So I'm going by the application that's actually in our system. So
Okay.
I didn't get it to the finish line, but it did score high on the impact. So
Bob Gross did something to add?
Well, no, it goes around the room, or,
No, you know what?
okay.
Let's try to make this actually work tonight. Does anyone have anything to add on this? Otherwise, to say,
Yeah,
let's just jump right into scores.
I did have, and I see it down here now, I wrote it in second. I wasn't keen on the employment, on how they, and to Craig's point, on how what they did, what they said, they're gonna hire another employee, but that's gonna bring in revenue. But the reason I passed it, Craig, is the point that they were impacted by COVID. That's the reason I gave him passing grade. I saw his point, I have it written on here, on mine also, but that's something that we can't look at everything. This is one of those applications that this business wasn't, in my opinion, impacted by COVID.
Okay. All right. Unless we have anything else, why don't we turn our score sheets in?
Very good.
Oh, Craig, you want to add?
I just think it may be helpful if either I or someone describe the scoring process, because it's a
So-
lot more than impacted by.
So maybe, yeah, for the fairness of the applicants that are here, I'm just going to read all the evaluation criteria so you understand how we're getting to whatever scores you hear. So the first is, we're required the proposed project will address the negative economic and or health impacts due to COVID-19 pandemic. That's just required for every application. Next is the section of 30 points, the degree to which COVID-19 pandemic created or contributed to the demonstrated clearly described financial adversity that the business is experiencing. Now, next section is a 40-point section, the degree of which it is demonstrated that the applicant proposed the project will assist the business in long-term recovery for that adversity and is not a temporary fix. The next two sections are both 15 points, bring us to 100. The degree to which the proposed budget for the project is appropriate and supported by documentation. And lastly, the degree of which the proposed timeline for the completion is reasonable and the project can be completed within 12 months. So, and that gets back to what I said earlier. So based on everyone who turns in their scores, you need an average of 70 for a positive referral to the town council. So with that being said, why don't we turn our score sheets in and we're testing you, Jackie. Why don't you sit closer?
She doesn't want to be near me.
That is a fact now.
There we go.
All right.
Cheryl, don't put that in the record.
It's fine, Cheryl. Don't worry.
She's in great shape. She's doing fine.
Fritz, 80. Jackie McNamee, 80. Chris Regan. Okay.
Alright, sorry. Alright, so we have 80 plus 80.
Chris Regan, 70. Mike Liddon, 80. Jesse Reynolds, 70. Craig Fishbein, 50. And Bob Gross, 75. There should be 2, 4, 7. Do we have?
Yeah, hold on.
Okay. You want to
I
read the
have-
names
no,
again,
I
or just the
have- I
numbers?
have the numbers.
Okay, you have the numbers.
It just didn't calculate properly.
Here comes Amy. I think that's what we needed. We want to calculate properly. Anyway.
Just do one.
72.14.
So that, we have a motion for a positive referral to the town council.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of sending a positive referral for custom travel for the amount of $25,000?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. So we'll go back in the agenda now to Diversifit. So, Mr. Gross, you're going to recuse yourself?
Yes.
So sitting on this application is Jesse Reynolds, Craig Fishbein, Amy Walsh, Jackie McNamara, Rob Fritz, Chris Regan, Mike Glidden, just for the record, Cheryl. All right, Chris, do you mind presenting this then?
So since Bob recused, go through Diversifit, is a DBA for Jennifer Nuzzo, has been in business in town for 3 years. We have profit and losses across 2019, 2020, 21, with varying states of profitability. 2019, given it a baseline, does show more than half of a loss and a small slight growth over 2021 in recovery. The funds are to be used, to establish a brick and mortar studio, formerly at Main Street Wellness Studio. Questions regarding security deposit, rent for the first year, fit up of a new space, marketing and web expenses for a total of $25,000. I think there is a proportionality issue here, and if so inclined, go around the table to discuss potentially a lower dollar amount, if we think it'll pass or not.
Why don't we just, hey, Chris, you bring that up? You wanna start that conversation? See if anyone else has any thoughts on it.
So I would.
If everyone's okay with that.
Well, I'm just concerned about the precedent, but because there's been other applications that have come before us that I think I would have been open to that, but that hasn't been the precedent.
Right. We've talked about, at least in the last few meetings, to bring it up either in the beginning or bring it up after the fact, as part of the conversation if we want to score it, or if we would just want to score it in a simple up-down vote. We can do that as well. I don't know what the group.
Have we had an application yet that we have taken the ad? I mean, because we've certainly had this proportionality thing. Usually we just say no.
Right.
Which I'm not, I'm just looking at the, so we're going to go back and look at those applications that we've rejected on the proportionality thing. With that in mind, that's one thing. But if we're going to carve this one out to treat this one differently than we have others.
So not speaking for Mike, 2 meetings ago mentioned if that was part of the conversation up front, to certainly introduce it. I see at least one nod of the head, recalling that.
Yeah, I think my recollection is that it had already gone through and voted on, and at that point we already had voted it down, and so the discussion of amending the amount had kind of gone by, but that if we were to bring it up early on, or at least suggest it, and if anyone else would support the idea, then we could start the discussion there. That was my recollection.
Yeah, whatever the body wants to do, I just raise a concern is that this individual has come to us and said, I will do X if you give me Y. And now if we give them W, have we put them in a position that they can't meet their original representation? And we're a year from now and they say, well, you only gave me $5,000 instead of $25,000, and I need rent, right? They're looking for $15,000 for rent alone, which means no income. That's what they're asking us for. So, I have no problem having the discussion. But.
Chris, maybe you want to, since you started this discussion about the proportionality, maybe you want to just get your mindset, what you were thinking. What was it?
just based on the revenue number, I mean, 25,000 for a business that is bringing in $10,000 annually seems significantly disproportionate when you add the last 3 years, 21,000. When you're adding, 25,000 on top of that seems disproportionate. I don't know if there's, I was just basically taking the temperature to see if there was an appetite for a lower dollar amount in order to get this to pass or not.
Rob, did you want to add?
Yeah, I didn't look at the financials quite as carefully, but I was, the only reason why I don't want to go by the revenue is, just because they, I don't know what the P&L was. So were they taking a loss on the first couple of years with the business investing into the business? So they may have still had expenses of $30,000 a year, even if revenue was $10,000. So revenue is, so if they're looking to get back on their feet, proportionality has to be taken into consideration other factors. So I don't think revenue is necessarily the best proportionality to use because again, there could be extenuating circumstances investing into the business, which has to come into play. If you were able to take the revenue plus the loss and add that on, then you have the entire cost of running the business, and that's probably a better number to use. It could be a little bit deceiving if you just use revenue only.
Anything else?
Is this an operating business outside?
Yes.
Well, it doesn't have a location. It's going to people's houses.
It appears it's
So
personal trainer.
They're actually going into the space because their sign is up next to Vinny's Deli.
Oh, the ice cream place?
Yeah, right. If
Next to Sweet
the next to Sweet Creams that used to be
that
that
little consignment
where he just rebuilt.
area.
That's where they're actually going into right now. So there's active construction. I can just say because I live right around the corner on Pomeroy. So
I'm looking at,
they are a business.
yeah,
They
I'm
are.
looking at rent here in 2019 at $20,000. Sorry, $10,000 in 2019 was rent.
Yep.
So when they're looking for $15,000 in rent, that's not unreasonable. That's why I said you can't really using revenue alone is a little bit
Good point.
can be
So
misleading.
I guess the first question is: does people feel strong enough that we should be looking at this from a proportionality standpoint, or the whole package?
Well, if you folks are okay with lowering an amount, I'm going to have to rescore it because I scored it based upon the proportionality thing. But if I'm hearing, which it's intrinsic evidence, bringing in something that's not in the application, but that's very heartwarming to me, so I would be in favor of something like 10 grand. There are obviously negative impact that, she represents. She had to close. And we know these places had to close, and that's trying to get back on her feet in a different location. So I think in the spirit of what we're here at, I think giving her 10 grand, even though she's asking for 25, is a good responsible thing to do. So I'm not lobbying, I'm just suggesting.
Okay.
My question is, we have never reduced an ask that's come before us. What's the basis for whatever number we pick? So why do you choose 10 grand?
It feels good.
See, that's the thing.
But maybe just to back up, just remember too, we're just making a recommendation. Ultimately, the council can turn around and say, we're giving them 25 grand, goodbye.
Yeah, but
So
I think in good faith we should think.
Well, the thing is, in this application, if you take a look at their loss and the revenue, it's $25,000, give or take, 25-30. I mean, they had a loss. If you look at in 2019, they had a loss of $14,000. They had revenue of 7, I think, so they still had a loss of $14,000. So they still had those expenses. She was just covering the loss, or they were covering the loss at the
Total
time.
expenses of 21.
However, we can't pay for their loss. Let's just say that she closed and walked away. Under the rules that we have,
Yeah.
we can't give her money for that.
It's a
But
valid
the fact that she's trying to get back on her feet, she was knocked down to her knees by the pandemic. So now,
I think the test, sorry, Jackie.
Sorry, just from seeing her posts on Facebook, she really, for me, stepped out of, the confines of COVID and was offering kayaking lessons, was doing hiking, was doing yoga in the park. So for me, she didn't just close. She kept trying to build her business. So I would be in agreement of, honestly, either the 25 or the 10 is fine.
So I guess the question is that is there a better likelihood that it would pass at the lower amount, or we submit the entire amount and have it fail?
I scored it very low based upon the proportionality issue. So I would score it quite differently at a lower amount.
And I
So-
echo the same thing.
Okay.
What did you say, Chris?
I agree with Craig.
And Craig makes a good point. I think that the idea is not to enrich a company as a result of the pandemic. It's to bring them back whole so that they can stay on their feet to make up for what they lost. To your point, the proportionality does make sense in this case, although I would probably prefer a little bit of a higher proportionality, maybe 15,000 to 18,000 instead of 10,000. I think that's a little more appropriate.
Craig, what's your comfort level?
12.5.
In true fashion, I wouldn't expect anything less of you.
8. That's how I negotiate. What's your basis?
My basis was looking at their losses in the general, around $14,000-15,000. I just looked at the 2019 numbers, and I think that's a fair. Because listen, every single application we approve, some are going to be less than what they need, some are going to be more because we're limited to 25,000. We've approved a lot of $25,000 allotments to some companies. That's probably a little bit of an overage. So I think 15,000. I'd like to keep that as the bottom threshold of $15,000.
You're creating a monster here, you realize that. Not me, but...
On the proportionality, I'm going to be very careful.
What I mean by proportionality is that the business has never made anything near 25,000.
Yeah, right.
So to give a business 25,000 when there's no, that's not even on the horizon at this point for the business is a proportionality thing. I'm just concerned about where we go from here with future applications. And then, right now we've got 3 categories, right, that we make recommendations. If we're now going to be, I'm just looking at the precedent, right? It becomes another area of contention, so to speak. I'm comfortable here. I just don't know what.
You make a very valid point, Craig, because there's a lot of ways to interpret that, and I think most of the applications, the 25,000 is probably fit based on all the financing. This is kind of an outlier, but your point is very well taken. That is something that we have to face.
Why don't we score it based on a $15,000 request, and we'll let the baby elephant grow.
Do we denote 15,000 on the
We'll-
form as well?
Why don't you denote it, on the forms, and then we'll make sure the motion is to be specific to that. Should it have a positive referral? And I'll take the forms because I'll read them to Jesse. Jesse, you okay with that? Thanks.
I did bring it up before, Craig, and there wasn't a temperature around the room to talk about a lower amount, and it ended up passing anyway, and that's where the conversation previously came up, so.
Okay, hold on, I should do this. You can hold on to yours. Okay. I think I got everyone. All right. Start off with Jesse Reynolds with a 75. Fishbind, 80. Amy Walsh, 83. Mike Glidden, 80. Rob Fritz, 80. Jackie, 80. And bringing up the rear, Chris Regan at 75.
$79.00.
A motion to send a positive referral to the town council for the amount of $15,000
So moved.
for Diversifit. Motion by Craig, seconded by Jesse. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Set. So this is going to the town council. You don't have to stay after, you can stay the whole meeting. Okay?
Do I have all of them?
Yeah. You have everyone. I just gave everyone. All right.
Riveted, so why not? This is
Yeah. Okay, we'll go on. The next is Tim Sway, Perspective.
You have one other person in the audience if you want to do it.
Who are you in the audience?
One for one.
Falling for wine?
I don't know, it's up to you.
Yeah, we'll go out of order. In fairness, since you're here. So we're going to do Wallingford Wine and Spirits. Amy Walsh, you are our presenter.
Sure. Okay, so my notes on this is a wine and liquor store in Route 5. Provided single page profit and loss statements. A little bit difficult to read because there were pictures, but the 2019 one was cut off in the photo, but you can pretty much see what the results were. Had a difficult time making a profit, and the pandemic didn't help. They want to use the funds to pay back debts and rent, which is my understanding that that's an inappropriate use of the funds to pay back debts.
I confirm. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, yeah.
Was it back debt or was it loss of income? Or if they're both 1%?
There's a tax debt. There was, in the backup, there was a coupon for the back debt, for the back taxes.
Which brings you to the thing that they don't have a clear letter from the state of Connecticut either for back taxes.
Yeah, and the application is in the name of, the tax return is in one name, but that name doesn't appear on anything that we have. But I believe it was rent, it was DRS debt, and then I don't know what COD is, but.
A cash on delivery.
Cash on
looking
delivery
for payments
orders.
for supplies.
Yep.
Is in his application.
So,
But I think that we were told he doesn't have a clean letter from the state of Connecticut.
Yep.
Or businesses.
Yeah.
oh, well, you know why? Because the taxes are.
Taxes are the readers. That's the only catch. It's a catch-22 sort of.
But they wouldn't be able to use the money to pay the taxes anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what the council set up. Number 2 on their list is copy of Connecticut Department of Revenue Services status letter.
Well, that's what I was thinking. That would be crafty here, because you throw it back in their hands, our hands. It's an incomplete application because the requirement is a letter from the state. Now, it's not their fault they couldn't get the letter.
Correct.
So we could say that we recommend, you know how that, we have an incomplete application. We're not going to take any action on it based upon its incompleteness. So the question is, what is incompleteness? Well, they don't have a letter. Well, of course they don't have a letter, bozo, because they haven't paid their taxes, right? But at least it doesn't kill the thing based upon that.
We just don't know how far back the taxes go because we're not given enough paperwork here to figure out. If we were given enough paperwork, we could see when the taxes were owed.
I kind of like that approach rather than saying no. And then,
Okay.
like you said, like Craig said, you would throw it to Craig's other lap and let the council take that issue up.
Yeah, I think that's a policy we agreed to. We're not gonna, if it's an incomplete application, we don't accept or deny it, we just send it back for processing, we will let the council decide what's acceptable.
It might come back to us
Exactly.
as a
yes.
result, and they may give a waiver.
Exactly.
In that particular case, they don't need the letter, so on and so forth. So,
Yes.
is it appropriate that I make a motion
Yes.
that we recommend no further action by this body on the application of Wallingford Wine and Spirits based upon it being an incomplete application?
Second.
Why?
Yeah, I was gonna say. let's
So
stop
just
there.
state why
Because
you're
there's no
determining.
letter from the state of Connecticut indicating that they are up to date on their filings.
There is a letter from the state though. It says they're not up to date.
Right, but
That's,
Yeah, there's not a letter saying that they
Good
are
standing.
up to date. So that's the requirement.
Yep. Okay, so that's Craig Fishbein making the motion. Jesse seconding it. Okay. All those in favor with the motion? Aye. Okay. So that'll go to the council. All right.
Question, Amy, when we had no action on these, did we do anything and submit it back or no?
I believe make a folder because just so there's a record of it, so that somebody doesn't say, well, where did it go?
And I'll put one of these in there. So
And just say no action.
Okay. So,
Minutes or something.
yep. Next up is Tim Sway Perspectives LLC, and that is JM.
Hold on 1 second. Just.
Get rid of Docu your pay for tonight.
On your list.
Well, good.
So he is a sole proprietor, guitar maker in town. He shows an increase in 2020 and then a loss in 2021. His documentation is very, very, very good. Shows, and he's only asking for 12,000. He's not asking for the whole 25. And the use is to be able to build the guitars right in town, so he doesn't have to send stuff out. And then I gave him a passing score based upon the use of the money. He does show a loss. And sorry, I don't know why I keep pressing the wrong buttons on my computer.
I have a question on this one.
Okay. Well, wait until Jack is done.
Okay.
So yeah, he wasn't able to go to events to sell his guitars, so he did a lot of online shopping. Online sales. And the documentation for what he's going to buy with the ARPA funds to really goes along with what ARPA's for.
Okay. Bob?
I saw it differently. I saw that his sales went up. The only difference in 21 was he had a large depreciation expense. So he really didn't have a loss, it was depreciation. And that caused him to be slightly below what it was in 19. But other than that, all the numbers are up every year. So to me, it didn't fit the criteria because his sales were up in 20 and 21. And his profit, take out depreciation, he took 12,600 depreciation in 21. Again, this is where if he gave us more documentation and showed us what that depreciation was for, he had depreciation in 19 of only $3,000. So it's a $9,000 spread there. Put the 9,000 back in 21. He had a profit of almost 40. He had a profit of 40,000.
Also, I don't know how anyone could ever craft a contract that would meet the representation. He says, I want to rely less on outside international vendors and make more of my parts right here. So would one have to get the backup as far as what he does for parts here and then compare them after he gets the new table saw? It's impossible. But I agree with Bob's review of the numbers. I mean, maybe he learned through the pandemic that he should be selling more stuff online. People like to go out and perform, but I didn't get him past box number 1, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Based upon the numbers, I mean, there's no negative impact indicated by the financial documents.
All right. Unless there's anything else, why don't we get our scoring sheets together?
Very fastidious.
Oh,
Bob,
sorry.
want to get this one?
I saw that.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I would have to sign, put your name, there's no way to reach it. I know. Then again, mine is like a barely change.
Why don't I have one?
Oh, I always did, I don't know.
Yeah, Mr. Talon, that were all over the place.
I always did, I don't know.
Whenever you want.
All right,
Chris Regan, 70. Jackie McNamee, did you not?
Oh, 75, did I not use it?
No, you didn't only filled in 2 of the blocks, so I'd have to give this back to
You
you.
spelled their name wrong, truthfully.
You really are getting docked pay for tonight.
Rob Fritz,
I want some of that
70.
wine.
Yeah, someone.
Jesse Reynolds, 80. Amy Walsh, 60. Mike Glidden, 30. Craig Fishbein, 30. Bob Hurst, 50.
Are you looking across the table?
We're just waiting for James.
Sorry.
It's okay, but you saw I couldn't count. I could total the 2, but I figured you have to fill the other 2 in. Jackie McNamee, 75.
$58.13.
So we have a motion then to recommend no further action on the application.
Yes.
Second.
I make the motion. So.
Craig made the motion, Amy seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, we're on to executive graphic systems.
All right, Executive Graphics Systems, been in Wallingford for 18 years, is a one-man show who has, actually from the looks at the financials, going back to 2019, a pretty solid and stable business. You can suppose, due to COVID, although I'm not entirely convinced that there was some impact for COVID as far as businesses not buying signs to draw in more customers, to bring in more business, etc. But you do see a steady decline in revenue, and then additionally up to 2021. 2020 there was an appreciable profit, and in 2021 a $32,000 loss. The request for the funding is fairly detailed as far as the requirements that are broken out, A through G, from establishing brick and mortar, shop expenses. Would like to see a little bit more detail in some of these categories. I think it meets the criteria that we have set, in my opinion. So.
I'll go then. Again, this is one of the ones, if we had more information from them. I was looking at the financials, and if I look at 2021, yes, he had a loss, but he had office expenses went way up, and without an explanation for it. And what I saw there was 2 items, domains.
Hold on a second.
Nobody joined.
Oh, somebody's online?
No, nobody joined.
Everyone joined.
After 40 minutes, it timed out.
Sorry.
Restarting it.
Oh, we have a.
It's still being recorded.
We have a recording.
So we can keep going.
All right, let's just keep going. It's fine. The Zoom recording looks like the audio. We'll just lift it off that. All right, continue.
So
I'm sorry.
I was looking at the 21, the year he had suffered the economic loss. 20, he did not during the pandemic when everything shut down. 21, there were 2 items on here that were quite substantial, totaling $38,000, which was more than his loss for the year. was domains. I mean, I know what domains are, but it was substantial. I don't know what the 24,000 was. And then below it, he had software. And I understand what software is, but those were in 21. That would affect his, I assume he bought new software, because in 20 it was $2,000. And 21, he didn't have anything listed for it. So that's this 20 and 21. I'm just looking at him and I'm just saying, I understand he had a loss. And you can tell that this kind of business is definitely probably going to be impacted forever. I don't think this is the kind of business that he's going to have to pivot to some degree on this type of business, because offices just aren't going to come back the way they did, because that's what he seems to sell to. But I just wanted to say that it's really close for me. I'm hoping that somebody can sway me the other way.
Tracy?
I should have spoke for the luthier, the guitar maker, but I failed to. I want to talk about this one just a little bit. My store is just on the verge of passing, and the only reason why I'm sort of taking that stuff into consideration is that this is the type of place that will have to permanently change what they do. So like a lot of the stuff that they're going to be producing and making, while we all assume that everyone's going to go back into workspaces with all the signage and all the things that this company used to make, is probably not the case. You know, if you take my employment, for example, I have an office, but I don't work there. You know, there is a lot less of that everywhere, and so what this person's looking to do is to pivot, to keep their business alive. They took a loss in 3 years, whether or not they had increased expenditures or whatever, relevant or irrelevant, because we did talk about people in 2019, for example, that showed a huge loss, but they said, I have a huge loss because I threw a lot of money into this, and then COVID hit, and then I couldn't recover. So even though I had a modest gain, I still took a huge hit because I couldn't get back what I was supposed to. So to me, this is a low pass. But I do, in the spirit of what we're trying to do here with businesses and such, this is the type of business that's going to have to sort of switch around what it does, and the fact that they're looking to do more stuff local and you know, to me it seems like again, low pass, but I just wanted to speak.
I think you got to be a little bit careful too when you look at a business. Businesses will transition to different focuses over the period of their lifetime, for the most part, not all, but a lot of them do. Our business that sells cars 10 years later might be focusing primarily on rentals or on service, even though they're still selling cars. So I think we have to be a little bit careful about trying to, your comments are very well thought out, but I think sometimes we have to be a little bit careful about trying to figure out if the money we're giving them is going to be necessarily used for exactly the type of business, and to find the business for what they provided during COVID. Because the nature of a business is to change all the time. Even if COVID didn't happen, this business might be changing how they do business in 2030 or whatever. So because I scored it on a relatively high, because it was impacted pretty negatively by COVID, that was obvious. And it fulfilled the criteria. And I've been focusing primarily on the year 2020, because I think that's the most significant impact of COVID. 2021 businesses were allowed to operate a little bit more independently, a little more. So that's the year that I look at. And again, I hope he changes, because I want him to be successful, or then.
What's the obvious diminishment by COVID? Where is that shown?
The obvious. Oh, my comment that I just made?
Yeah.
I thought I looked at the financials.
So, I mean,
what
I'm seeing is a diminishing, failing business that he admits in his application that he's having to drastically shift. He was a national operation, competing with national groups, and now he's decided that he's going to have to change his business model. Now, if he was negatively impacted by COVID, and COVID is gone, the pandemic is over, then why would you need to shift? You would go back to what you did. So it could be that the business was failing already. If we look at the 2019 was over 200,000, 2020 is about half of that. But then 2021, which basically the pandemic's over with, people are doing stuff, he's still going down. We haven't seen that.
Unless you pivot successfully. So it takes time to pivot successfully. You don't do it over the period of a week or a month. It may take a year or 2 or 3 to rebuild that brand.
But it could be also that and I'm just surmise, let's just say that he has bad customer service, and that is not going to matter at all.
Right.
I mean, unfortunately, we don't know where he was the year before 2019. That would be helpful in my analysis.
Yeah.
But I'm a little concerned, what are you going to use the money for? I mean, a pivot. He wants to finally, I guess, join 1 to 3 local chambers of commerce. Well, why the hell didn't he think of that before? And this is a business that's making tens of thousands of dollars, right? So in the middle of the pandemic, he's making over $100,000. Any business person, any local business person who recognizes that is going to get involved with those groups. So now he's looking for us to pay for that. And if we don't give him all this money, he's not going to do that. Then that's just a really poor business decision.
You've seen on some of these applications, there seems to be an emphasis on how their investment locally, as if sometimes you wonder how genuine it is. It may be very genuine. It may be more to try to play to our sensibilities about our town and our locality, that give me this money, it's going to be invested locally so I have a better chance of getting it, versus your points are well taken. I mean, great.
Jesse, you wanted to add something?
Well, yeah, only to push back a tiny bit, in the sense that, again, if your job is to create signage for national corporations that occupy large spaces, you're not occupying large spaces anymore, don't have anyone to sell your stuff to. Or it sat there for 2 years and nobody needs new stuff. There's you got it, like these types of businesses, it's kind of like, there used to be elevator operators and there used to be full service gas stations, and those things went away and we all learned how to operate elevators and pump our own gas. But these types of businesses, when they do lose the ability to go wide, and again, I mean, if you're doing it nationally, well, maybe things dried up and this is the way to pivot locally. I understand some of the stuff about like joining chambers of commerce, when to do that, but if you were nationally and you're mostly just shipping stuff out, then if that's not really happening anymore, then you're like, now you need to connect locally, and that's why this person's doing it.
So what is he going to do with the money? I mean, I'm looking at shop setup expenses. That means he doesn't have a shop now.
Well, he wants to open up a brick and
Brick and mortar.
store.
I know. So, I mean, that's just like a brand new business.
We're funding a startup.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then I guess the comment would be is look at your, the two 15-point sections along with the 40-point section. Those are three of those really, based on what you're saying, I would say reflect it in your score.
Well, the only thing I would say too is we got to look at one thing here too, is to build our business back up. He says that when he advertises, because, and this costs anywhere from $300 to $500, when we advertise, we substantially increase our sales. But that's
Right,
$300 to
I kind of agree with Jesse on that. It speaks to the fact, the nature of his business. So, rather than beating a dead horse, let's unless there's anything new to add to the conversation, we'll get our sheets in and keep things moving along.
Checking for completeness.
I moved my name, I remembered all the boxes. It's on
Yeah.
the
Put a big frown every time that
Now we already did.
when we hand it back to you. Oops, I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
Gross 65. Fish line 45. Amy Walsh 65. Rob Fritz 80. Jackie McNamee 75. Chris Regan 75. And Jesse Reynolds 70. And Mike Glidden 80.
First. 69.38.
Technically, it's
Okay.
So we have a motion to recommend to the council take no further action.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Just to clarify, Craig made the motion and Chris seconded. All right, next up, we'll go into Route 5 Realty. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Reynolds.
You got a folder. And right here. All right. So, Route 5 Realty is a realty company that owns commercial rental and lease property in multiple spots on North Carolina Road. The purpose of the business was not closed during the pandemic, but this is an instance where this business is a property management company. So the thrust of the application really has more to do with the lost revenue that they could not collect from people who couldn't pay rent and so forth. And so what they're asking for is the full $25,000, but that is actually part of a larger estimate of repaving their parking areas. This person, cites that there's still tenants who are still unable to pay full time. The money would be used to do projects that had been planned to do prior to the pandemic. So these were things that were intended but couldn't be done, whether it be for reasons that weren't necessarily expressed. However, it probably was related to financials. The gross income that they provided in the application did drop from 2019 from $159,700, and in 2021 it was $103,600, with a drop of $117,000 in the middle there. So they have been on a sort of economic downturn financially. The full amount of the project would be $52,000 and change, and they would put in $27,000 of their own money, either through a bank loan or putting it on a credit card. They would be paving two areas, 736 and 748 North Colony Road. And in terms of my general overall impression of it, I gave it. I had some questions as to I was sort of stuck on the appropriateness of it. But if I just took it on face value as just a company that wanted to invest in something that they couldn't do because of COVID, and in general they're looking to sort of improve the overall state of their business in terms of like having paved parking lots so that there's less liability and so forth, I gave it a low passing score if we do deem it to be fully appropriate given what type of thing it was. They had full backup with an estimate of what it would cost. They filled out the application fully. They provided the information that was required. But I didn't necessarily think it was a slam dunk in terms of an application. That's my initial thoughts on it.
So I guess the first question is, do we feel this really is a business application?
I think it's a business application. Where I had problems scoring it, quite frankly, is the 40-point box. Mm-hmm. The degree to which it demonstrated the applicant's proposed project will assist in the long-term recovery from the adversity. So, it's a commercial residential area. I don't know which. I didn't look up like which it is or anything like that. But in the application, it does represent in the application it's commercial and residential. Mm-hmm. So I know that residential were given reprieve from paying rent during the pandemic. Commercial was not. However, there's no representation that I can't rent this place because my parking lot looks like, there is a representation about an insurance liability, but I don't know what that is. It could just be you know, if somebody falls because of the condition, there's going to be an issue. But based upon the score sheet, I can't get to a passing score. Because that 40-point box gets scored relatively low. So those are my thoughts.
Go ahead, Amy.
I had a problem with this one in that it's a landlord. And the drop in income is documented, but there's no proof that it's from the tenant, that it's from tenants not paying rent.
Exactly.
It's a personal tax return. There's the DRS letter is to the person, not the entity. And yeah, there's no documentation that his loss in income is from tenants.
So, what have anything else to add?
I have to agree. I mean, again, this one is lacking. If they could have given us more documentation, if in fact it's commercial, these are commercial, so Greg's point, they were not given the ability not to pay. They should have given us something to prove that those businesses didn't pay their rent.
Yeah, it doesn't say rent. It says I own commercial rental and lease property. So I assume that
Yep.
And
is
this,
talking about, but it could all be commercial.
well, the thing is too, the two that he paid them, are those the two that didn't pay the rent? Is it all encompassing in that whole group of rents that he's receiving?
Yeah.
So I can't figure that out.
Not a lot of information.
All right. So I think it's an easy one to swear then.
There's your package here for the last one.
What was it, 69.1?
I should look at it. I didn't even put it on the box. We have all the papers here?
Yep. No?
No.
We're waiting on Amy.
And Ron, no. Not right away. Okay. Jesse Reynolds, 70. Mike Liddon, 25. Rob Fritz, 65. Chris Regan, 60. Bob Gross, 55. Fishbein, 50. Amy Walsh, 50. One of these says it's stuck together for some reason. Jackie McNamee, 70. I look at those.
55.63.
Motion to the council to take no further action on this application.
So that's motion made.
Second.
Motion by Craig Fishbein, second by Bob Gross. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Moving on, we're on Ziva's Meat Market. This one is CB. That was supposed to be Carl. I guess I'll pinch it for Carl. Let me just pull that one up. What is Ziva's?
This is a meat market right down there.
Yeah, this is the grocery store. It's in the Wallingford Plaza, right opposite. So it's a butcher, grocery shop. What they claim is that due to the lockdown, their business had to close. They lost a bunch of perishable items as a result. You could see they actually demonstrate this business took a little bit of a hit in 2020, but then in 2021, they doubled their numbers. Nearly doubled their numbers, I should say. I'm not going to go that far. They received some PP loans. They had a HELCO. What they're looking to do is equipments and payrolls and bills. They want $15,000 for equipments. What it is, I can't tell you. They want payroll $10,000, bills of $2,500. And that is pretty much the gist of this one.
They mentioned that they received PPP, but they didn't tell us how much.
The amount, That's why I'm saying, it isn't just this
And,
one.
and the heat code grant, which could have been any number. They didn't tell us how much. I know how much the PPP was, 43,000, almost 44.
But I just know, if you look at the profits, I mean, you can
Well,
see,
you know what I'm
this
saying.
is a successful business. This is,
Right.
although they lost some money in 2021, which you could say could be a result of,
2020.
or 2020.
But they got grants to make up for the difference. We just don't know how much.
We don't know what exactly they received to keep them on their feet, but
Correct.
long and short of it. So that's, I don't know, does anyone have any other comments to add on this one?
Well, I know I recognize the adverse comments with regard to the application. I just want to glom on a little bit. One of the things they're looking for is payroll. Money, 11,100 for payroll. So if they got PPP, and we had that information, it's the first time I've seen something like that on an application. So.
Yep. Okay. Unless you have anything else to add, why don't we score up and move on? That one. Sorry, Bob.
Two, three, four, 5, 6, 7. One more.
Do we have more blanks?
You get 2 left.
I have some too. That's what I went outside for. I grabbed some. I might run down.
I got one over here if anyone needs.
Anybody
Okay.
you guys are all prepared?
Where are these going? Oh, to Jeffrey.
I guess to the pile down there.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
go ahead.
Bob Gross, 55. Mike Glidden, 45. Greg Fishbein, 40. Rob Fritz, 45. Jackie McNamee, 60. Amy Walsh, 62. Chris Regan, 65. And Jesse Reynolds, 60.
$54.0.
Okay, do I have a motion? So recommend to the council, no further action on this application.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Craig, second by Bob Gross. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're on to Everest Isles LLC. Craig.
Yes, this is a men's clothing manufacturer for wholesale and direct sales. It is a failing business, and I can say that with some confidence. Its numbers are negative, and based upon the tax returns, the numbers have been negative for quite a long time. Right now, the capital contribution by the owner of the company is minus almost $1 million. The representation is that the entity will sign a lease and renovate a storefront in Wallingford. I don't have any basis to well, I just didn't score this very high. So.
Yeah, same thing. This thing is just, it's been losing money year after year after year. It's just, and he's gonna start a new business now. Try and open a storefront. I don't see it.
I didn't get them past box 1.
Okay. Why don't we,
Really? How come? See, this is the company that they were ready to ship their products in the spring of 2020, and all of their accounts canceled on them, and they had a significant loss in 2020. Yeah, they weren't doing well before that, but
They actually had a better year in 2020 than the other years.
2020 was their best year.
Of the ones that they've disclosed to us. But
yeah.
If the capital contribution is minus $1 million, that means for about 10 years hence, They've been
Yeah.
running negatives
Yeah,
every year.
well,
Yeah.
I used to work for biotech companies, so, yeah.
Yeah, that's all R&D.
Yeah, so-
This is a
Yeah.
clothing company without a.
That's all R&D, so.
Yeah, this has no location.
Well, he sells with summer things, so you would have thought that he'd be shipping in March. I was originally thinking he may have shipped like for the Christmas season, which means if the payments were 60 to 90 days, he wouldn't receive until 2021. But to your point, that's its summer thing, so those revenues should show up in 2020.
Okay. Well, why don't we pass in score sheets unless there's anything else to add to this one?
Like this.
6, 7, 8. This one was.
This is a.
I was glad to get that one.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's the same thing. Why was my name given to this one, but oh well.
We're all set to go. Amy Walsh, 80. Jesse Reynolds, 55. Chris Regan, 50. Mike Liddon, 30. Kathy McNamee, 70. Gross, 35. Fishline, 20. One more. Rob Fritz, 75. And if he's summer wear, that stuff's made and shipped by December. That stuff's in the store on display in March, April for now.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
That stuff's shipped before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then he makes bathing suits and that kind of stuff. Stores that have already purchased the stuff, if that's what it was. If it was, like you said, Bloomingdale's and that kind of stuff, the stuff would be there already.
61.25.
Motion to send referral for the council, to take no further actions on this application.
So moved.
Motion made by Craig Fishbein, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Chris Regan. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, Rob, you're up. RCP Unlimited for our last of the evening.
Okay. Well, this one didn't pass in the required documents again.
That was what mine was.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah, no, comment. Obviously, everybody read this. It's an 8-year-old company, primarily involved in commercial excavation type or other construction type activities. They did receive some PPP loans. They mentioned in their application, but they did not list what they received, so we don't know what that is. Gross income for 2019 was $395, 2020 was $310, so they did take a slight hit in revenue, or gross income, excuse me, and then they bounced back pretty aggressively in 2021 to $385. I struggled with this a little bit for number one. It's an incomplete application because they have P&Ls there, but they're not. They appear to be official, but they're not stamped by any particular accounting firm. So you assume it is, but it's not confirmed. There are no actual income tax statements.
Why do you make that assumption? Because the lines are straight. Did they it appears?
It's okay.
I qualified
Hold
that
on.
statement because there's a little bit of there is some nomenclature at the bottom of the page, but anyways, yes. So we don't know. So we'll assume that they might very well not be official, even though they appear to be. But that being said, it didn't appear to be a complete application because they are unsubstantiated P&L statements. And to be honest with you, when I looked at this, they did have a hit on the revenue in 2020. Their net income was higher in, at least the way I read the financials. The P&L statement was negative 62 in 2019, 76 in 2020, and almost $20,000 in 2021. They did mention that the PPP, I'm sorry, was that they received 2021 for $32,000, which gave them a positive. So they were impacted by the, but I don't know how to, I graded this with a very passing grade, but then again, they didn't have, if you want to question the P&L statements as not being stamped and official, you can count this as need to be sent back to the council.
That was like my next comment, was that, do we want to count this as send it back for the fact
I would,
you don't have tax returns, we have,
We should stay consistent.
Yeah.
we need to send this back. 'Cause
All right, so-
it's not a legal thing.
Let me just, with regard to this one though, I got more, because the P&Ls don't even match up with the application.
Yeah, you're right.
So when we ask, provide gross income for the following years, and they say for 2021 their gross income was 385,000, I look at the P&L and it shows 240.
Yeah.
So that's not just incomplete. That's I don't know. I don't know what it is.
well, I guess let's have this question first. We feel it's incomplete and we vote it like incomplete. Just a straw poll of people here.
Yes.
Sweet.
Because we can't make a judgment call.
Yep.
Craig makes a very valid point.
I agree,
We
because
don't have
I felt
information.
I feel the same as Craig
Yeah.
in a few other comments on it that I'll keep to my. But anyways, I guess that would be the first question. Do we treat this as incomplete and then we'll call it a night and kick it back to
We have to
the.
stay consistent.
Yeah.
Okay.
We haven't passed the other ones with just profit
So-
and loss.
So then, in keeping with past practice, Bob, you want to make a motion since
Make a
you.
motion to pass this one along to the town council for incomplete application.
What's incomplete?
They didn't
Why?
give us profit and loss.
Why?
They didn't give us the tax returns.
Okay.
Second.
So motion was by Bob Gross, second by Craig Fishbein. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. So we're next down to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
If you had anything to discuss, you said you were going to do it at the end, but I don't think you have anything to discuss anyway. But I just want to make sure if you did.
No. Motion for adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. And we're adjourned at 7:44.